Hey, I'm Sasha. I'm a 16-year-old absolutely obsessed with batteries. Your cell phone, your smartwatch, your laptop, and the EVs that we hope to see on the road in the future. All of these things are powered by batteries, specifically lithium-ion batteries. Lithium-ion batteries are absolutely essential to the way that we currently live our lives, and they're everywhere. My project is making these batteries last longer so we can have less battery waste. And the way I'm doing that is I'm using something called a battery management system, or a BMS, which is found in almost every single battery pack to optimize the function of these batteries. First off, let's start by answering the question that I had when I first heard about this problem. Why do we even care? Why is lithium-ion battery waste such a problem? Well, first, the amount of lithium-ion battery waste we have is expected to grow exponentially. And this is because we're using more and more batteries as we rely more and more on different technology. The problem with this is that we have more and more battery waste that we just have nothing to do with. This battery waste, most of it, about 95% of it, goes straight to the landfill. And a landfill is a terrible place for a bunch of reasons, mainly because it causes a lot of economic and environmental damage. So starting with the economic damage, basically what's happening here is that you have this battery which costs you a lot of money to make, and the materials inside it also cost a lot of money, and you just put it in the landfill. So for example, 1 ton of battery grade lithium costs about $17,000. So throw that away and you just lost $17,000, which doesn't really make sense. These batteries, once they're in the landfill, they have a tendency to start landfill fire. And this actually costs the UK economy alone about 150 million euros annually. So if that wasn't bad enough, let's look at the environmental impacts. So these batteries have a lot of toxic chemicals in them, specifically lithium hexafluorophosphate, which is in the electrolyte. And when you put these batteries in the landfills, these chemicals can leach out into our soil and water and pollute them. When I first heard about this problem, I was just like, why can't we just recycle the batteries? Because then we get the materials back, they don't go to the landfill. It seems like a win-win situation. But the problem is that recycling these batteries is really uneconomical, and that's the main reason why only about 5% of them do end up being recycled. So the problem is that when you want to recycle a battery, you have to break it down from the pack into the individual cells and then down again into the materials. The problem comes when you want to go from pack to cell. And the main reason for that is because in a battery pack, all the cells are quite literally cemented together, so they're almost impossible to disassemble. I talked to Kurt, who works at Umicore, about this, and he was the one who actually explained all this to me. He basically said to me is that if we want to solve this hurdle and make battery recycling more efficient and more economical, we'd almost need to redo the entire way that battery packs are designed, which is very, very unlikely to happen because the reason that they're made this way is because it's the most efficient and it's the most economical. So getting them to switch isn't really a feasible idea. After hearing this, I asked myself, why do we even have battery waste in the first place? Why can these batteries not just last forever? And what I found is that the main reason why batteries age is because they're used under harsh conditions. So there are 3 main harsh conditions. Overcharging, trying to put more power into your battery than it can take. Over discharging, trying to take more power out of your battery than it can give, and extreme temperatures, so too hot, too cold. And what I found is that if we can prevent the battery from operating inside these 3 harsh conditions, then we can make it last much, much longer. And so I researched more and more, and I came across this thing called a battery management system, or BMS. Essentially what the BMS does is its main job is to prevent the battery from operating in these harsh conditions. Let's say it's sensing temperature. Maybe it senses that our battery is too hot. Then what it'll do, it will add some cooling fluid to help cool the battery down and keep it out of that harsh condition. One of the main things that a BMS does is it estimates battery state of health. So you can think of this as like how much the battery has aged. The reason why it's important is because it actually lets us define where those harsh parameters are so that we can do a better job of avoiding them. So basically, as the battery state of health decreases, so does the safe operating area, or everything that's not the harsh parameters. So we need to know state of health to know where the harsh parameters are, so that we can better avoid them and better make the battery last longer. I researched all the state of health estimation methods, and I came across this one called Kalman filtering. I reached out to Antonio, who is a PhD student at the University of Michigan, and he gave me a lot of resources on the math behind extended Kalman filtering. I coded a simple extended Kalman filter that would work on GPS data to predict the future state of something. And what I'm currently doing now is I'm building a circuit that will collect battery data so that I can use my extended Kalman filter on that battery data. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm discharging a lithium-ion battery at a constant current, and it'll allow me to get something called an SOC-OCV curve, or a state of charge open current voltage curve. And essentially what this does is it helps me to be able to predict state of charge, which will then let me predict state of health. To really show you the impact a project like this could have, I think it's really important to go back down to the bottom of the supply chain where all these materials are being mined. Because there's a lot of unethical things happening at the bottom of the supply chain, and not very many people are aware of it. So in Argentina, this is where a lot of our lithium is mined. And the way we do that is we use something called brine. So basically what we do is we pump water up to the surface and we let the water evaporate, which will then leave behind concentration lithium. The problem with this is that a lot of people in Argentina experience droughts and water shortages because all of the water is being put towards this lithium mining. The Democratic Republic of Congo is where we get most of the cobalt that is in every single cell phone today. And the conditions there are perhaps the worst of all. Because the problem is that one of the only things that is actually happening in the Congolese economy right now is cobalt mining. So basically anybody who lives there is forced, if they want to have any sort of a living, to work for these cobalt mines and mine this cobalt. The problem is that they get absolutely no personal protective equipment, and that means that they're breathing in toxins all day. And these toxins can cause huge amounts of disease. If we can make each battery last longer, each of the pre-existing batteries last longer, then there's less of a need to mine more of these materials, because not only is it damaging environmentally, but it also has huge social and economic impacts. I want to give you a brief overview of what the status quo of this field looks like. And I think first, it's really important to point out that this problem is something that is more concerning as we look to the future. So Jill actually told me this, but most of the battery waste that we have right now comes from waste from gigafactories. So the cell phones and the laptops, all of these things only have one cell. They're not really going to contribute a huge amount to this battery waste. But the problem comes when we have all these EVs, and in about 7 to 10 years, they're going to come offline, and we're going to have hundreds of battery cells per EV that we just don't have anything to do with. So there are a few companies that are working on this though, and there are a couple I'd like to mention. So first, there's Redwood Materials. So Redwood Materials was founded by the co-founder of Tesla, and basically what they do is they have a really efficient way to do cell to material disassembly. So basically they can extract all the valuable materials from the cell. And there's also Umicore, who's doing something very similar, although it's a slightly different process. The problem with these two companies though is that they're not actually solving the root cause, because they're just doing cell to material disassembly, but they're not doing pack to cell disassembly, which is the main problem. And as I mentioned, to solve that, we basically need to redesign the whole battery. And I haven't been able to find a company that's working on that. There is one company though that I think has a really interesting approach to this, and they're called Moment Energy. Basically what they do is they take batteries that were used in EVs and they put them in grid scale storage. I was talking to Marcelo, and basically what he told me is that batteries are thrown out once they reach 80% of state of health. And that seems pretty odd to me. Why are you throwing out batteries that still have 80% of their capacity left? The reason is because EVs are really high power applications. So once batteries reach 80%, they just can't take it anymore. These batteries are perfectly fine to be used in something like grid scale storage. And that's exactly what Moment Energy does. To be completely honest with you, my idea doesn't directly solve the root cause either. I'm not redesigning the battery pack, but that's just because I think that that's a really unfeasible and really high barrier solution. To kind of differentiate it from the existing BMS that we have out there, most BMS are literally just trying to prevent the battery from overheating and exploding. The one that I'm proposing is going to focus a lot more on actually extending the lifespan of these batteries to go ahead and solve this problem that we have with battery waste. The biggest problem I've seen when it comes to optimizing BMS is just the lack of data. And the reason why is because it's not really being stored. So one potential solution here is something called battery passports. And essentially what this is it's something in the BMS that will store all the data while the battery is operating. So basically it'll say this battery was used in this application and it was charged this many times. And it'll basically tell you all that, because the problem is that, especially when we look at something like what Moment Energy is doing, they don't know enough about what the battery was done in its previous life to be able to accurately say what it should be able to take in its next life. So the problem here is that we need all that data to be uploaded to a central cloud. So that's kind of the biggest technical hurdle to this solution right now. If you think that I'd be a good fit for this award, there are two main things that I'd use the money for. So the first is to expand my BMS, because what I'm doing right now is only operating on one cell. Where it gets complicated is when you have multiple cells all connected in one big pack. If I could go there, then I would actually be able to work more so at the forefront of the industry and hopefully make a bigger impact. The second thing I want to use the money for is to fly out to BC. So I live near Toronto, and Moment Energy is based in Vancouver. So they are the only startup that's gotten this documentation that basically says that they're allowed to use second life batteries. But I just want to say another huge thank you to you, because you allow me to live in a time where there are so many opportunities just like this one that I can apply and have the chance to get a huge boost in my ability to explore things. So thank you.